We're talking to Isla Grant, lawcareers.net's senior editor and the organiser of the annual City Law Live Careers Conference for aspiring commercial solicitors. Hi Isla.
Hi Josh.
Part of your responsibilities as the senior editor of lawcareers.net is to put together the week's commercial roundup, which brings together the tweets from City Law Live's Twitter account about the goings-on in the legal and commercial world that week. How do you go about doing that?
Okay, so it started when I got involved with City Law Live, and I thought that I'd better try and get to grips with commercial news a bit more firmly. So the way that I do it is based really on the fact that I try and send out a tweet every day from City Law Live, just touching on one of the commercial news stories of that day. So the first thing I do is look at my Twitter feed, and I'm signed up to all the various kind of news resources, legal press, various commentators. And I guess what I'm looking for is either one of the big sort of top stories that are sort of occupying the economic pages or business pages. So, for example, it might be something like something with global implications, like the recent Greece elections, which is obviously has implications for what happens in the Eurozone. Or a couple of weeks ago, the Swiss currency, the franc, decided to get unpegged from the euro, which sort of rippled out over the world, so that was quite a big deal. Some of the other things that often are of interest are mergers or big deals that are happening in the commercial world. BT just bought back EE, so that was quite a big deal in the, sort of the telecom sector. Also when things go wrong, last year one of the biggest stories was about a potential buyout of AstraZeneca by Pfizer, and there were lots of talks of that happening, and then it didn't, so that was quite a big story. Other things that I sort of tend to look at are things that might have implications for the UK economy, and often that seems to be to do with what's happening on the kind of retail sector. So there's always lots of stories about what John Lewis is doing, or M&S. Tesco's been a really big story recently because they sort of, over the last 12 months ago, seem to be collapsing or imploding, or lots of stuff happening there. So that's often quite interesting. And then also regulatory stuff, like the Financial Conduct Authority, which is a relatively new body, is looking into the way that banks and various other financial companies are operating. The biggest story this week actually has been HSBC. It's been unveiled that they've been hiding lots of people's money in a Swiss bank account. So it's things like that. It's just trying to get a sense of what's out there, what might be relevant to clients of law firms. I certainly don't, pretend to know about these things in any great depth, but what I've found has really increased my knowledge is looking at it every day, trying to pick out a story. I'm certainly not writing much about it, but that's certainly helped me. So that's probably, overall, that's one of the things that I would say to students is do a little bit every day, because that really helps you to kind of get to grips with that a bit more.
As you mentioned, the commercial roundup is only a great start, but only a start really when it comes to building up your commercial knowledge.
Yeah.
So what are the best resources and media outlets, in your opinion, for students who are really looking to gain a better understanding of the commercial world?
Well, I'd say you certainly don't have to be reading the FT cover to cover every day. I don't. But I'd say start with some of the broadsheets. So The Guardian is really good. The Times, The Telegraph, anything that has got some good weighty, commercial business stories in it, and you can look at that online. The way, again, as I said, the way I sort of get a lot of my information is through Twitter, so following those papers. The BBC is a really good resource that I use a lot because it's broad, it explains things really clearly, it's obviously very kind of up-to-date and current. They've got really good business commentators, including Rob Peston, who is someone that you must follow on Twitter because he sort of has got his finger on the pulse of all kinds of things. The Economist is a really good resource. The problem is it's behind a paywall, I think, so they've started doing a daily feature called The Economist Explains, and that's free to read and often talks about sort of business economic stories, so that's a really good resource as well. The Today programme on Radio 4 is sort of, I think it's from 6 till 9 or something every morning, and again that's a really good roundup. It's got lots of opinions and sort of commentators who know what they're talking about. It's quite early in the morning, so if you can't get up, it's all on iPlayer and you can catch up with that, so that's a good resource as well.
We're always talking at Law Careers now about how important it is to have commercial awareness and build up your knowledge of the business world. But, for students just coming to this as something new, why is it so important to develop this part of your knowledge, which doesn't really have anything to do with technical legal knowledge?
No, absolutely, and it's really hard to pin down exactly what it means, because it sort of means different things to different people. So it's important to develop this part of your knowledge, because law firms want to hire lawyers who will have a sense of the commercial world and how their job as a lawyer fits within that. And that's, I think, kind of twofold, really. One is that the clients of commercial firms, are businesses operating in a commercial context. They're from lots of different sectors, but they come to their lawyers for advice, and it's not just legal advice anymore. More than ever, lawyers are providing commercial business advice to those clients, and they have to understand the sector in which they're operating. They have to understand the different pressures that they're under, the different motivations. So it's really, ultimately, law firms want their lawyers to, keep their clients happy, retain them, build up those relationships, keep those relationships so that the client keeps coming back, time and time again. So it's really important to understand what those businesses need from their kind of legal stroke business advisor. And sometimes that means, the lawyers that I talk to, it means giving much more than just pure legal advice, and it's sometimes looking at what the most practical solution is, or what the best outcome for the client would be. And that may mean not sort of pursuing something all the way through the courts just because you think you're right, or it may be that you think you've got a claim to something and actually the cost or the loss of goodwill might mean that it's not worth taking it that far. So it's a sense of your clients are commercial beings and operations, and you need to get a sense of that commercial world. The other thing to remember as well is that law firms themselves are businesses. They operate. They've got a financial imperative to keep going and not fall apart. So again, the people that work within them have to keep that in mind. And in a way, it comes back to the client relationship, in that you want to keep your clients happy. You want to keep those clients coming back. So it's understanding all of that kind of commercial world and being able to give good commercial advice alongside the kind of legal advice as well, really.
Pretty sound justification for why you need to do it. Then students best get their research on the go, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I say, it doesn't have to be this massive, daunting task. You don't have to subscribe to the FT or read sort of massive, weighty tomes. It really is about starting to do a little bit, if not every day, often, and just getting an idea of the sorts of things that the lawyers that you hope one day to join, what they'll be thinking about, what will be kind of influencing the way that they, give advice to their clients. And the other thing is, I'd also say that law firms don't expect their trainees to arrive as fully formed, and knowing everything, and they know that, you're still getting to grips with it all, so they will be there. They'll probably often will have ways to help you develop these skills as well, but it's a good idea to kind of start getting on top of it now, even if for nothing more than to have something to talk about at interviews. There will undoubtedly be questions about maybe recent news stories or recent deals, so you've got to have a little bit of an idea of what's going on to present as a credible candidate, really.
Great little introduction. Thanks for talking to us, Isla.
That's all right. Thanks very much.